So I've got some slides and some updates to share with everybody, but the aim of this is to be helpful to you as practitioners. So it's important that, you know, we sort of get feedback and ideas from you as well about what we could do better around this whole sort of community of practice as well. But there is another one which I will share more information sort of later on in the year that we've organised as well. So what I will do now is I will do the sharing of the slides. Okay. Right, so has that appeared? Nod if it's there. Yes, okay. Right,
yeah,
okay.
It has.
Right, so this is what, oh gosh, my arrow's moved. This is what we're going to cover today. Okay, this is what the plan is to cover for today. So at the first session, we did a Mentimeter just for us to get a feel in terms of what's happening out there around this sort of whole approach to profiling. So we just want to repeat that exercise just for our own benefit, because we don't routinely understand how much of this activity is taking place elsewhere, and where, you know, and what the challenges or the benefits are that you're sort of finding in terms of using it. And then at the last session, when you sort of put your comments in, we've taken a lot of those ideas away, and this is just to give you a little bit of feedback in terms of the progress for your asks in terms of the last session. Because I'm manning pretty much the sort of interface between the neurodiversity team and sort of practitioners at the minute, I've had some very helpful suggestions from, well, I thought they were really helpful suggestions in terms of how people have approached this and introduced it. So I'll just whiz through some of those as well. And then the bit that I think people predominantly want to know a little bit more about is the steps to consultation. So I will be going through that side of things as well. And then just some reflections from me in terms of the conversations that I have been having with different practitioners over the last sort of few weeks. Then just a little bit about just some sort of snapshots in terms of why, you know, just sort of why we think this is important as an approach. And then we move on to Lucy, who will do the sort of CPD. So this is about getting the language right and sort of neuroaffirming practice as well. So and then Charlotte's going to man the chat. So if you've got any comments, questions or whatever, just put them in the chat. If you've got specific CPD topics that you want us to include in the future or run specifically, I know we had a general ask last time, then please put those in the chat as well and we will get to those too. So okay, right, so if we start with Kate's bit, which is the Mentimeter, I'm just going to stop sharing for a minute and then she's going to get her QR codes and all the rest of it up. Oops, sorry, cat, sorry. Right. Yes, so I'll hand that over to you, Kate.
Yeah, okay. I've put the QR code in the chat there so that people can get the QR code from there if they prefer. But there's also the code at the top. So if you've used Mentimeter before, you can you can go on to menti.com and then use that code at the top, or you can use the QR code that I've put in the chat. If I leave this screen there for a minute for people to put their responses in, that'll be really helpful for us to be able to see what's coming through. Already looking quite different from the last time. So the last time we met in, was that January or February? I can't quite remember now. There was a huge skew to the left there on the never used side of things, which is not a surprise really, because it was still fairly early days in terms of rolling out the training. But yeah, we'll see what the pattern is from today, and we'll save these results as well so that we can compare over time how this changes.
Yeah, there are 121 of you here, so
yeah,
yeah,
so
which is a relatively small sample of from the sort of cohort that have been trained.
Yeah, so it's over 1,000 trained now, aren't there, Sue?
Okay, it looks like people are having a go.
Yeah.
Some of you've done quite a lot.
Still got people arriving as well. I'll just leave it another 30 seconds or so, and then, like I say, if you can still keep adding your sort of responses in, and we'll still save those. Yeah, it looks like it's slowing down now. So edging between the never and the 1 to 4 times as the most popular, and it'll be useful for us to get information, ideas from these, and particularly I think from the nevers, it'll be useful for us to understand what the barriers are to that, which hopefully the next slide might help with. But you might want to put that in the chat, actually, what the barriers are if you've never used the tool so far. It might be that you've only just recently done the training, obviously not had a chance yet.
Yeah, there's some comments coming in, Kate.
Okay.
Just so some people haven't, but they signpost and talk about it to parents and schools.
Right. Okay.
Haven't had chance yet with everything else, but has got 4 to 5 that need to use it for though. Some people are putting the amount of times they've used it in, but they can't get onto the Mentimeter. So there's some.
Okay.
Some people have used it 4 or 5 times, which is great. 3, 2, 1.
Okay.
So not sure what to do with the outcome. Okay. It feels like every agency is telling me to do the profiling tool. As a SENCO, I don't have enough hours in the day.
Yeah, so that's something that we'll sort of cover in the discussions today, won't we?
Yeah. There's some themes coming through that even if we don't have time to cover them, we can do a written response and get that sent out. But we should be able to cover these, I think, today.
Yeah.
GPs have had comms, so you shouldn't be getting requests from GPs. But this is still very new. The pathway only changed on the 1st of May, so we're still a bit early days.
Okay, I'm going to change the screen to the next one, so it should change on your Mentimeter if you've still got it on your phone, so that you can answer this question. Has that changed for people? Oh, yeah. And if you haven't seen one of these before, basically the bigger the words are, the more people have said that same word. So the words will start to change in size.
Also, you said the outside section of iTunes there.
There's some words coming through in the chat, Kate. Time consuming, reflective, time consuming again, supportive for parents, interesting.
Okay, we can add those in afterwards, can't we, to build it up?
Yeah,
Okay.
real mix of positives and barriers there, aren't there? I think.
Yeah.
Too early to tell. I think that's a really fair comment, actually.
Yeah.
No clarity on next steps. Okay, hopefully we can help answer a lot of these questions that are in here today.
What I'll do is I'll keep that open, but I'll stop sharing, and then because I think we've got a bit of a good idea there, and then I'll keep it open so that people can keep adding their thoughts as well for a while, and I'll mute myself now and hand back over to Sue. Thank you. That's really appreciate your participation in that, because it really helps us.
Eugene's got his hand up.
So that was just me asking for the link to the Mentimeter. Ignore me. Sorry.
I'll ignore you. Okay, all right then. I'll ignore you then, Eugene. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, so just following on from last time, just to give you a bit of update in terms of what we've been working on as a team. So what you asked for last time was you asked for a library of case studies and completed profiles. We have got a selection of these. Some of these are actually handwritten as well. So we're going to convert these to samples, and we will be hosting a folder on the Services for School neurodiversity strategy pages, so that you will have access to a library of anonymized profiles that you can use for reference. So we have got, I think we've got about 8 so far, and we've got some more that are sort of coming in that people are sharing with us. So we will put those on the Services for Schools. And for those of you that don't access Services for Schools, we need to find another appropriate platform to put these on as well. So from that point of view, so we have put quite a lot of these resources now on the Services for Schools page, the neurodiversity one. So that's in there. Clarity on the new pathway. I will talk to that specifically on another slide, just a little bit sort of further into this session. So we talked about one of the sort of asks was ideas to help children and young people with the highest needs. For those children that where you wish to take that to consultation and seek additional advice, we have, as part of that consultation network, we have got people with specialist backgrounds as well. So sort of looking at OTs or sort of specialist learning, those are the specialist learning disability background as well. So in terms of meeting the needs of those children where more specialist input is, we're going to create access to expertise within that sort of consultation bit, which I will talk specifically about how you do that and how that works on the next slide. And then sort of practical profiling advice, including sort of demonstrations. So far, all the support with profiling has largely been me sort of responding to inquiries, but equally I'm very happy to meet with people as well to go through what they've done, what they're sort of stuck with. So I've had quite a lot of half-hour Teams meetings. One of them was a 2-hour Teams meetings just to go through the process. So I'm more than happy to do that. Our plan is to bring people together, so there are opportunities to learn and discuss from other profilers as well. So the plan is to bring people together, but our energies at this point have been focused more on trying to get the consultation offer up and running. So that's sort of that one. Parent information sessions, the link for those is actually on the next slide, but we're running those fortnightly, and they are about an hour and a half. Those will be, the content of those will evolve because I've written something which is, I think, what parents would like to know. However, it might not be what they want to know. So I think it's really important that we are flexible about this, and we take feedback in response to and adjust things in response to you know, what parents are telling us in terms of what they want to know. We have got a frequently asked questions leaflet now, which looks like that. So that's for parents and professionals as well. So that is something that you will get at the end of this session. We also have got the parent information leaflet, which explains a little bit about it as well. So we've got both of those that we can share with you. They are on Services for Schools. Well, the information leaflet is frequently asked questions has just been updated, but that one will go on. Actually, we could probably put in some of the questions that you put in the chat today, if that would be helpful too. Like I said, the information sessions, there are 2 evening information sessions for working parents as well, if they want to come along to those, if they can't make it during the day, because I've had a request come in for that. So we have got those up and running. You book those through Eventbrite. So that's the way that you access those. The more targeted training you asked for, it's on our to-do list. We haven't actually got as far as building a sort of training offer as part of this process. So but we do recognise that's something that we need to do, and also thinking about sort of short, sharp bursts of training, not sort of lengthy training, so that you can access it and it's not going to take over the whole of your day. Referral processes, clarified, that was something that you asked for. Referral is a bit misleading. The consultation process is where we get an understanding of what's going on for the child, for you, for the parents in terms of the presentation. And that's where a diagnostic assessment is considered, whether there is sort of what the information that you're telling us is sufficient to sort of put them down that route, or whether we're looking at a sort of a different response to that. So but that I'll explain that in a little bit more depth. Dividing the behaviour tables into age groups, we have an early years set of behaviour tables. The other version, the all ages, persists, so we haven't actually divided it into early years, primary, key stage 3. It's something that we can do. It's just the capacity to do that at the moment. We actually haven't had that time. Making it electronic. Portsmouth have mastered that one. They now have an electronic version of our primitive paper version. They have sort of worked with a secure external platform to allow profiling to be carried out electronically, rather than with bits of paper that you're sort of flicking over, etc. So we will look at where we can secure the investment for that moving forward, because that would require investment in terms of developing an online system whereby the profiling can be captured. So where do we capture the plan? The feedback that from me has that I have received is that it's not really clear on the form where the what's the plan and what the plan consists of. So we've expanded the original form, and actually following on from the capturing of that conversation, we have actually sort of made the plan more explicit. And the way that we have set it out is with a view to sort of feeding into that consultation process. So so you've got priority areas, what are we going to do about it, and it talks about the school setting practitioner, the home, the young person, if we've got a young person who's able to contribute, and also that there is a bit about how frequently it's reviewed as well. So so we have in response to the fact that the plan wasn't explicit, we've worked on that to make that clearer. How to engage parents where this is proving challenging. That is is something that I'm sure that everybody's going to encounter. All I can say in response to that at this point is that the old system meant a referral into a waiting list that lasted many years, okay? And this new process is about creating a foundation upon which the diagnostics actually is sort of pulled from. And if parents want to come and hear a little bit more about it, that, you know, we've got the information sessions and we've got the written information. There is some information, some more on the Neurodiversity Hub as well, if parents want a bit more. But this is about, it's just moving the a decision around diagnostic assessment further into the pathway rather than it actually being the front door of the pathway. And I think if it's, I guess if parents are coming at this with a specific outcome in mind, then I think the reassurance we can give them is that diagnostics is a consideration in this pathway, but it's not the first step. So it's you know, how you frame that with parents. You know your parents much better, obviously, than we do, and I think we're not sort of stressing the fact that it's not being taken away. It's just been moved further. This decision around diagnostics has been moved further into the pathway. So in terms of how you broach this with a parent, I think it is helpful to look at the Neurodiversity Hub website, all the information that's on there. And then that sort of gives a bit of an introduction to the framework as a whole. So that's some of the feedback I've had, that's been helpful. The evaluation of the impact, Alex Clark has been doing a little bit of work on this within CAMHS to look at the benefits. So we will feedback more in relation to that at a later date. Where the child or young person does not have access to statutory services, so they're not at school, then that's where I would redirect them to me or the team, actually not me specifically, I'm not taking everything on board, to the neurodiversity email box with and just explain that I've got a situation at the moment I'm trying to resolve, and looking at whether the voluntary sector, Young People Cornwall, can be part of this child's journey in terms of doing the profiling. So that's a conversation which is currently underway. Improving the content of the behaviour tables, we have the one that you highlighted most frequently was the attention, the behaviour tables that focus on attention. We have reworked that one, and we will be taking out the old content and replacing it with the new, and making sure that the most updated version is actually on the Services for Schools site. So there was a group of people that worked on that. The ADHD lead, Lucy, and Alex Clark have worked together to improve the content of those tables. I've talked about the Services for Schools. We have now trained about 1,200 practitioners in profiling. So we've been busy. The training is available weekly, and it's easy to book onto it. I've talked a little bit about the sort of more specialist access. audit is something we will get to moving forward. Somebody asked about the Boxall profiling. What's different about that? It does cover many of the areas that the neurodiversity profile does. My sort of understanding of it was that it was sort of almost like more sort of school facing, whereas what we are trying to do is a tool that the system can use. The other thing is ours is free. Okay, I know that there is a cost to that one. So I'm not saying that is I'm not saying either one is right or wrong, because some schools might well have sort of bought into that one already. But we are trying to build the local offer of support around the profile that we are using. And build the sort of local support. So if you're already using that, then I'm not going to say don't use it. I think as long as the information is transferable onto the request for consultation, then we would consider that information if that was something that you were already using. And the formatting, we've taken that on board. We need to make sure that the headings transfer across to all the sort of different pages, etc. So so we know the formatting isn't brilliant and we shouldn't be relying on colouring things in. So we need to get some sort of we need to get the documentation that we have provided sort of more sort of user friendly, and not quite as primitive as it currently is. So okay, so that's a lot of the issues that you put out there at the last community of practice, plus a few others that I've picked up during my conversations with practitioners. So and then this is just some things that I've been told that people are doing in terms of introducing profiling. So so starting with a sort of softer approach, so looking at the Neurodiversity Hub, getting it up on the computer, helping people get it onto their phones, just to have a look at it, look at all of the areas that are in it, just quickly sort of or just sort of understand what each area is sort of looking at. So as a sort of first exposure to profiling is about looking at all of that information and advice that's on the Neurodiversity Hub. And then actually sort of follow-up sessions, sort of just talking generally. This is sort of more groups, more talking generally about profiling, and just maybe having a look at the form, and maybe sort of sharing the behaviour tables. So this is a sort of stepped approach into it. And then from that, looking at sort of individual meetings, sort of one-to-ones with sort of families, etc. So, and like I said, signposting people to those information sessions if they would like to attend those. Some sort of settings have actually given the parent a blank form to write on during that sort of structured conversation around the profile, and then maybe having a spare laptop with the Neurodiversity Hub or the behaviour tables app on another laptop for sort of reference, and then sort of typing in the conversation during that session. So I think in terms of sending out the behaviour tables prior to the meeting, they are incredibly lengthy, so it might be that they can be a bit overwhelming. So I think your parents, and you would know what their response would be probably to receiving a very lengthy tome that contained lots and lots of information, some of which at this point wouldn't necessarily be relevant to a child in their age range as well. So that's just some things that I've picked up from people when they've been telling me what's happening. Right, so that's just that bit. Right, getting more help. So steps to consultation. I think this is what people particularly wanted to know. So this is this is the process that we have created. So step 1, complete the profile with the family, identify the high impact areas, identify, implement, record strategies, adjustments, and any specific interventions agreed and put into place. Okay. And then we are asking for a minimum of a 12-week implementation period. Okay, so that these the sort of agreed actions can be put into practice. And ideally sort of review just to check how they were going. And then that is the link for the portal to access consultation.
So you've got a hand up. So you've got a hand up. Do you want me to monitor hands?
Yeah, if you monitor hands. Sorry, Eugene, you have a hand.
Yes. Yeah, don't ignore me this time. When it says access to more specialist advice and support for particular need, what does that mean precisely?
What that means is if the profiling and the plan and what you put into place is meeting that child's needs, okay, and you feel as though they are developing, accessing everything that they need to, that they're sort of making progress, but where you've got stuck maybe with a particular area, it's not purely the route through to diagnostics. This is about, for example, if you've got a challenge that you feel is around sensory needs specifically, okay, and you don't know where to go next around the support for that child, then you can request consultation, and we will match you up with someone who can talk you through maybe some additional steps, or maybe troubleshoot, come to the school and help unblock things a little bit there. So it's
who would that be exactly? What agencies? Well, or
it's in terms of the team that we're building. We've got several of Kate's team are part of this offer. So we've got a range of sort of neurodevelopmental practitioners. We've got a specialist learning disability nurse. So we are gradually building that network, the neurodiversity team to support and respond to sort of what's coming in. But at the moment, we don't know what's going to come in because nobody's filled in a consultation form yet, apart from me with my test form. So I checked it was working yesterday. So that's the point. That's the sort of whole focus of speaking to someone where you feel that you need more help as a practitioner in terms of knowing how best to support that child or young person.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
A couple more hands, Sue. We've got Leanne.
Hi, sorry. Yeah, I think someone's answered it in the question box. So obviously we're in a senior school and there's some students that don't present whatsoever in school. However, at home, parents are really, really struggling. So how do we go about profiling then? Are we just doing it on parent voice if we're not seeing it in school?
Yes, you would need to sort of profile that on the basis of the parent voice, and then that might be where you then come to the consultation, because actually what are we talking about? Masking? We're not exactly sure what we're talking about here, so having that conversation will help to unpick that.
Okay, so we've done so steps wise. If there's a student that's attending all their lessons, they're achieving well, parents are saying it's obviously completely different what they're seeing at home. They feel that the minute they get home the mask comes off and the child's just not coping. So obviously we'd put in as just a general standard, we would probably step up a little bit of mentoring support. We'd probably look at somewhere we've got in-house counsellors, we would do all that types of things, but it'd be really hard to provide. Yeah, so I'm assuming that parents are really then want the referral to go ahead, so we would just profile how do we evidence what we've done is, you know,
I
to try
think
and stay better if they're managing through, well, masking through the day, but appear to be managing through the day and don't want to engage with the team.
I think
Charlotte,
that's what you articulate really on the form, is that despite efforts, I mean, really for a secondary age, school age child, their voice is really important.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if you can evidence that you've tried to engage with them to find out, you know, there may be a reasonable adjustment that they need, but they just haven't felt confident in talking to you about that. They may appear to be really, you know, coping well, but they're really not actually. So this is a great opportunity, really. The profiling process is that guided conversation, that collaboration, so everybody's voice is heard.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. Just one more. We've had a few come back of children that are already diagnosed, that one or two that have been having a few problems with their mental health recently, and we've put things in place at school the best we can, but GPs are still batting parents back to us and saying we can't help with the child's mental health because this profiling tool also helps established and diagnosed children. So is it we do the same thing again then? We would do, so this is all the things we've got in place, but the parents are reporting the child's mental health struggling at home.
And
this isn't for mental health.
No, it's not for mental health. This is where that's sort of a referral into mental health services, just with being very explicit about the fact that the child is neurodivergent and has a diagnosis of whatever, but they need some support with their mental health, because CAMHS are very on board with the work that we are doing in terms of embedding or adjusting their approaches, their sort of mental health approaches around neurodivergent children, children who have neurodiverse needs. So yeah, no, this isn't a one size fits all for everything. I think you know, that's something I was going to raise in a minute, but I'll just take one more question because I'm mindful of the fact that, I'm just mindful of the fact we've got to get Lucy's bit in. So Charlotte, if you've got a quick question.
Hi, yeah, I'm just a little bit concerned that you said you've not had any of these forms come in yet, because I went on the 1st of May and followed the instructions on the ND Cornwall website, and it said to email the profile with outcomes and strategy. Okay. So I've emailed 2 in on the 1st of May. So have they been received?
I've got some that have come through as email attachments. What I haven't had is any that have come through the portal. Okay. So I have received some. Yeah, I have received some that have come through as attachments to emails, and we will process those because those were before we had the portal opened. So that's fine. That's fine. Yeah. No, I did get some different format. No, that's fine. That's fine.
Thank you. Cheers.
All right. So so this just to finish off this one. So it may be that the plan is having a positive impact, that the portal link is there. It may be that the plan is having a positive impact in which case consultation could be accessed later. It might not even be needed at all. Okay, it isn't an automatic assumption that you do this and then you access consultation. It might not be necessary. And with the consultation, there are 3 outcomes. The form that we receive looks like this. Okay, this is the form that we receive. If you go through the portal, I've just put some random things in here, but so you've got details. We have to have a bit of background information because we have to treat this as a referral when it comes in. So who's requesting the help, education. Sorry, I'm going to whiz through this. Young consent, and then we actually talk about the profiling. So that information transfers across onto here. Okay. And then expectations for consultations and contextual information. So that is the request for consultation that you need to fill in. Okay, so that's that one. And then you've got the 3 options. Help with profile and planning if it's identified, advice and guidance, access to more specialist advice and support for a particular need, and consideration about diagnostics is another part of that conversation. Okay, so I keep looking at the questions, but I'm going to leave Charlotte to answer those. Okay. And then this is just some thoughts from me. These are my personal reflections on things that are coming through. So who is profiling for? Okay, it's for children and young people where the practitioner and the family are seeing emerging ASD and ADHD, okay, either as a specific cluster of behaviours or sitting among other neurodevelopmental needs, so learning, language, coordination, sensory differences, and you're not sure what is going on, but it's sort of falling into this arena. So that's the population. It's not an alternative to mental health. It's not a universal requirement that every child who's sort of showing sort of developmental needs undertakes profiling, okay? Because you've very capably supported and managed children's needs for a long time. So this is thinking about those sort of emerging ASD, ADHD needs primarily, but within the context of other things going on. It's not a universal requirement. It isn't mandated for an EHCP needs assessment. However, it's helpful information to submit alongside everything else. If you've only got one area of need that's apparent, then follow what you've always done, okay? Which is if you've identified that there's a significant need around speech and language, then refer into the speech and language therapy service. Okay, so it's not about replacing everything else that's out there already. It's not a backdoor into diagnostics in that let's just get this out the way and then I'll just put in a consultation and refer them to, in for sort of diagnostics. Diagnostics is a consideration, but this isn't the diagnostic pathway. It's the neurodiversity pathway that we are building at the moment. Just to sort of just to try and get people to sort of reframe that a little bit. Profiling is the foundation on which diagnostics sits, which I've said already, and it should be the constant sort of before, during, and after that whole process. Education must not be the only partner who undertakes profiling, because what I'm hearing is that schools are very much the sort of default for profiling, and I do appreciate that in many respects the child and family the best. However, it's not automatic that it's always the school that does it, and I want to be really clear about that. It isn't mandatory after 12 weeks to seek a consultation. You seek a consultation because you want to discuss and explore, where else you can go with a particular plan, or to explore whether diagnostics is something that is it the right time to look at that now. GPs will not be doing profiling. GPs consultations last all of 10 minutes. I don't feel that realistically a GP can undertake profiling with a family within the way that they work with their schedules. However, we are exploring opportunities to work with social prescribers in the GP practices as well as potentially being able to pick up some of this. It isn't an assessment. Don't try to make it into an assessment. And it is collaborative. It's not something you can just say to parents, here's the form and here's all the information, can you just do all of this yourself? And then if there's any questions or queries, then just please speak to me. And I'm quite happy to sort of respond and answer to the best of my ability. This is sort of comments from parents where they've undergone the diagnostic assessment and then it's been a massive letdown. Whereas what we're trying to do is create some solid foundations upon which diagnostics sits. And then I won't go into those because Lucy needs to do her bit. I've just put some contact details there, which might be helpful, just trying to differentiate between the different emails that are appearing. But at the moment, in terms of the bottom 2 email boxes, I'm manning both of them at the moment, and Charlotte's sort of in the background too. So if it's in the wrong place, don't worry, it'll get to the right place. So that's for that one. And then just last one before I hand over to Lucy. The next Community of Practice is on the 19th of September. And that's the topic that we are going to be covering. Okay, so that you know what happens next. Okay, now I'm sure there's loads of things in the chat that we will need to get to and get back to you later, but this is an hour and a half of just whizzing through everything. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'm going to hand over to Lucy, who can explain what she's going to be talking about and embark upon it.
Hi everyone, sorry, my brain is completely fried from trying to keep up with the chat and give some answers in there. So, so I apologise if I babble a little bit. So at the last Community of Practice, quite a few people asked about kind of what do we do next with the plan, and kind of how do we use that information to set some goals and kind of come up with some strategies. Obviously we've got the Hub website, but it's trying to make that link between the two. So and there was also quite a lot of feedback after the ADHD presentation last time about the emphasis on a very medical model. So I was asked if I could do something about more of a neuroaffirming approach to neurodiversity. So I've tried to cover both of them in this session. I got a bit carried away, so there's quite a lot of info, but you will all get a copy of the slides. I've put stuff in there that you might want to refer to later on. There's some links that you can look at. There's bits that you can come back to at another time. So I hope that's okay. So yeah, we're going to look at what is neuroaffirming practice, what that actually means for the classroom, how we can use information from the profiling tool, and then thinking about how we can support children and adults in schools as well to be authentically neurodivergent. Hopefully this is a bit of a recap for you all, because you'll all have been on the training. So neurodiversity, we expect that different people's brains work differently. That difference isn't a problem, it's not a disorder, it's not an illness, it's not something we're going to treat or cure or fix. It's just a different way of being. And these things are brilliant, because if we all thought the same way, we'd never be able to solve any problems. The team of us who are doing a lot of work on the profiling tool and putting all these things together, we're a very neurodiverse team, and I think that's a real strength, because we're seeing things in different ways, pointing out flaws and trying to fix them that other people might not have noticed. So how neuroaffirming practice differs from kind of a more traditional model is it's much more of a focus on the person. So strategies, tools, accommodations, how we can support that person to be who they are, but in a more supported way, rather than using the rewards, the punishment, aiming for compliance. It's more about how do we support this person to meet their needs. And the focus of change isn't on the person changing, it's about thinking about, okay, how does the environment need to change? What can we do? And it's looking at why, so why things are happening rather than it's all about behaviour. How do we change the behaviour? I don't know if anyone follows NeuroWild or has seen NeuroWild on Facebook or Instagram, but I'd really recommend it. She's a speech and language therapist who is autistic and has ADHD, and she produces some really brilliant visual resources. She's written something on telling your child they're autistic. There's another one on telling your child they have ADHD. They are absolutely brilliant. They're all freely available, so really, really would recommend checking her out. But I loved this cartoon of the very medical model of this cat. So disordered vocalizations, repeats meow instead of woof. Obviously here dogs are the neurotypicals. Atypical physical features, atypical play skills, severe fetch deficits, behaviour issues, severe language disorder, doesn't respond to name, therapy to teach tail wagging skills recommended. So it's just a bit of a playful look at What happens when you're comparing two different groups who actually normal for that group looks very different? And if you treat all cats as broken dogs, then, you know, it's not great, is it? Most places are designed for neurotypical people. I saw a comment in the chat just before I dived into this about a new trust encouraging teachers to get rid of fidgets and stims, and uniform changes have to have medical evidence, and that's not great. That really worries me. Actually, we're seeing quite a lot of it, particularly in one particular mat, which we are trying to address. But if you've got a load of kids who feel unsafe and the environment is unsafe for them, they're not going to learn. You know, as an adult, if you went to school and were told, oh no, you can't come to this meeting because you've got the wrong colour socks on, the response probably wouldn't be very polite and might well get you fired. But yeah, it's a lot of the logic is about preparing children for adulthood and employment, but we wouldn't treat people that way in a job, and yet they're treated that way in school. You know, we've had cases like we've talked about where children coming out of school, going into kind of their first jobs and being really worried about having to ask to go for a toilet break, and the employer going, why on earth are you asking me? You know where the toilet is, you can just go. But we're training these children to be very, very rigid. And actually that isn't preparing for employment at all. Anyway, sorry, bit of a diversion there. So neurodivergent people often get the message that the way they experience the world is wrong and that they have to change. And that's really damaging. So we need to think about how we can change that. May have come across the double empathy problem before. So this idea that autistic people communicate one way, non-autistic people communicate another way. And it's the crossover that's the difficulty. It's not about one group being right and one group being wrong, or one group being better at it than the other group. It's that difficulty in the interaction. There's been some really interesting research where groups of autistic people and groups of neurotypical people were equally good at passing a message between them. But when they mixed the group to have a mixture of autistic and non-autistic people, those messages just went completely out the window. So it's not that autistic people can't communicate or can't empathise. It's just that when those two groups of people tried to do it together, things fell apart. I really love this comic. Again, back to the cats and dogs. If you haven't come across it, I've put the link to it when you get the slides out. So being autistic often feels like being a cat stuck in a world of dogs. The world is too loud, too intense, and it feels like you're speaking a different language from everyone else. Yeah, we get quite a lot of kids, don't we, who might act in a way that generally might show that they're happy, but actually that's a sign for them that they're really distressed. You know, children who laugh in really scary situations, like, well, why are they laughing? Or they're laughing because they don't understand, or because they're rude. Actually, it's not. It's a, you know, I don't know what to do with this, so I'm laughing. The world tells you that you're the problem, that you need to fit in. But maybe you're not just a rubbish version of a dog. Maybe you're actually a perfectly good cat. And then this just goes to want to explain a little bit about the double empathy gap. So autistic people might find it harder to understand non-autistic people, but equally, non-autistic people might find it harder to understand autistic people. And it shouldn't all be on the autistic person trying to make the changes to help the non-autistic person understand them, and vice versa. This cartoon does specifically talk about autism, but we know it applies to other groups as well. So both sides need to make the effort to bridge the gap. So what can we do? Being curious, I think, is really key. So asking why, asking children for, you know, why they're finding something hard, what the situation's like for them, what their reality is, and also listening. You know, if a child tells you that that light is painful for them, or that a certain sensory stimulus is really painful and really, really upsetting, don't say, oh no, it's not, it's fine. because then they're not going to tell you when things are wrong because they're being dismissed. So it's being curious and actually listening. How do we help children genuinely feel safe in an environment? You might say, oh, well, school is safe. It's a safe place. So yeah, they're not being chased around with a knife or anything. But if you don't feel safe, then you're constantly on high alert and you can't actually learn. And a lot of our kids with interoception difficulties don't know what it feels like in their body to feel safe. So sometimes we have to do a bit of that work in teaching them what safe and relaxed feels like. Recognising and celebrating neurodiversity. And it's great if you've got staff members in school who are openly neurodivergent and happy to share that. One of the schools I work with, Senko, is autistic, happily shares that with the kids and the parents. And it's brilliant because the children have this amazing role model of someone who, yeah, finds some things tricky, has some really great skills in other areas, can talk about sensory differences and the need to stim, and stims quite openly in school, and it's fine, you know, because kids learn what they see. Supporting all children to understand themselves, not just your neurodivergent children. But I think a lot of the time we don't do this with any children. So helping children to understand how they learn, what makes them feel safe, not just we do this because this is the rules and this is what we've always done. But if children can understand themselves, then that gives them the options, then be able to understand others and to see the differences and to see kind of how we're the same, how we're different. Supporting self-advocacy. And yes, that includes children saying no and not wanting to do what you want them to do. But it's so important. We know that rates of abuse are far higher, including sexual abuse, for our neurodivergent children. And a lot of that is down to masking and compliance and people pleasing. It's really, really important that we support children to listen to their bodies and to trust their instincts, and that it's okay to say no in situations that don't feel comfortable. Don't set goals that encourage seeming more neurotypical. So don't set goals about encouraging eye contact if a child finds that uncomfortable. Don't make goals about playing in a neurotypical way if that child doesn't play that way and doesn't find that fun. And thinking about the classroom expectations that you use, especially if you're a neurotypical teacher or practitioner, you know, things like 1, 2, 3, eyes on me, which you hear a lot, don't really think much about. For a lot of children, if they're looking at you, they're not listening in the slightest because all their energy is going into looking at you. So thinking about how else can children show you that they're ready to learn? What school I was in recently just said, show me you're ready to learn. And there was a kid looking off to the side, just gave a thumbs up. They were ready to learn, they were listening, they were engaging, but their best way of listening wasn't by looking at the teacher. Obviously, it's going to be tricky, you've got to get to know your class, but start trying to think about what the expectations are in your classroom. It's just a nice visual here that you can refer back to on things you can do in terms of neuroaffirming practice. And you've probably all seen this one before, it comes up in emotion coaching training a lot. This idea that kids do well if they can. And if the kid isn't doing well, they probably can't. And it's not necessarily that they won't, it's why can't they? So it's like we say, it's being curious. What's getting in the way? What are the barriers? If our processing systems are like this, like me just now trying to keep up with the chat, we can't access logic, make good choices, use perspective, think flexibly, problem solve, control impulses, focus on a task. They're just not possible. You know, those mornings when everything has gone wrong and the coffee machine's broken and the alarm didn't go off and the shower's not working, and then you try and start your car and the engine won't start. You're going to lose it. And someone telling you to calm down isn't going to make the situation any better. It's probably not going to end well for them. And yet we quite often expect it of children. So thinking about neuroaffirming goals. So think about your goal. Is it encouraging the child to be more neurotypical? If it is, change it. Is it child-centered? Is it something that's genuinely important to them? You know, are they actually going to buy into this goal? Does it make a difference in their life? Could the goal be for the class, the teacher, or the school rather than the child? So could you have a goal about the class learning about autism or ADHD or dyspraxia, learning about different communication styles, you know, learning about what different people do to help their body feel regulated, things like stimming. Look out for value judgments and assumptions. So it kind of links in with the one about being more neurotypical, but quite often if you are neurotypical, you don't think from the other perspective, which isn't, you know, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, it's just what we do. Recognise fluctuating needs. You know, we've all got the kids who, oh, they did that 10 minutes ago, why can't they do it now? Or they've been able to tie their shoelaces every day this week and now suddenly they can't do it. It links back to that previous slide about when everything else is up here, you do lose skills, you know? We can't always do things at the same level different days. So if you're setting a goal and your goal is that this child will be able to do this thing 100% of the time with no support, it's probably not realistic. But your goal could be that this child can do something and will ask a familiar adult for help if they're finding it tricky that day. So you're sort of building in that fluctuating capacity. Okay, so because people asked about the next steps having done the profiling tool, I've picked out one bit from a profiling tool that I've done with a girl in a nursery, just about her sensory needs. And what I'd like you to do is have a think about how you would work with this child if they were in your class. What goals could you set? And that could be goals for the child, for the class, for the setting, for you. So she has a self-restricted diet. She prefers dry, beige, predictable foods. She's very particular about clothing. She hates wearing shoes and socks. She struggles in noisy, busy environments. She loves to be climbing, spinning, bouncing, hanging upside down. She often puts inedible objects in her mouth, e.g. glue and Play-Doh. She doesn't like her hands being messy. You can put some ideas in the chat if you like, or you can just have a think about it. What might you do if this child was in your class? I did want to put you in breakout rooms, but Sue pointed out that there's a lot of people that could get very messy. She's 3. Okay, in neurodivergent TA, yeah, could be really handy. What would you ask them to do? What would the environment be like for them? What resources would you have? Not expecting anyone to have all the answers because none of us do. Sensory audit, sensory plan, yeah, sounds like a good idea. Some jewellery, yeah, could give that a go. Yeah, ensuring she has the resources to move, swing, climb, absolutely. Yeah, yoga ball, hammock, offering a range of foods, including her preferred foods. Heavy work, yeah, we've got loads of really nice ideas coming in here. Looking at the acoustics in the environment, yeah, that's one I hadn't considered, but good one. Movement breaks, yep. Ear defenders, quieter area. Monitoring her safety, definitely. Okay, so knowing where she can wash her hands, access where to do this for all children, so it's universal. Yes, good one. I know there's non-teachers here too. So if you're not a teacher, but you were working with this child or a similar child, you can share ideas for a non-school setting as well. These are things that apply at home as well as at school. Wearing gloves, sucking drink through a straw. Yeah, we've got loads of great stuff going on here. I'm really, really pleased that nobody has put anything about sensory desensitization, but really try to avoid that. It generally just causes trauma, so we don't want to do it. Unless, obviously, it's a very specific thing under the control of an OT or someone with real skills in that area. But respect their sensory preferences wherever possible. So we're not going to be getting her to stick her hands in a bowl of spaghetti to try and get her to not mind it, because she's still not going to like it. And she'll just be upset and probably not want to come to school because she's being made to stick her hands in spaghetti. I wouldn't want to stick my hands in spaghetti. Thankfully, no one makes me do that at work very often. How can we help her feel safe? Someone mentioned ways for the whole class to wash their hands really easily if they're doing messy play. Making sure she's got safe food options available. I know that's come up as well. You might want to introduce a choosing plate. I think someone's referred to the steps to eating training, which would be brilliant. That would be a really good one for the adults to do. Having a quiet farm space available and finding ways for her to request this. I know quite a lot of you mentioned having ear defenders or a quiet room. Safe climbing, spinning, bouncing equipment available. Risk assessments in place, which I know came up in the chat as well. You know, things that you can do to ensure her safety. Someone's just put in the chat, as a nurse, we'd be worrying about constipation and bowel issues. We would have to treat her physical needs. Yeah. So you'd be looking to increase her food choices, absolutely. Obviously, with your own professional experience, you bring different things to the situation, which is absolutely fine. So I had to think about some goals that we might want to have. So her key work here being able to recognise signs of her feeling overwhelmed and to support her to access a quieter environment or a regulating activity. To be able to request a regulation strategy when with a familiar, attuned adult using a total communication approach. So about respecting all different types of communication. She could be pointing, she could be using symbols, she could be using objects of reference. And that she'll be able to access different environments safely. So someone mentioned risk assessments. If she's not going to wear shoes or socks, you obviously need to be really careful about what she's stepping on. The nursery in question had an evacuation plan. So if the fire alarm went off, they had a plan about what they would do if she wasn't wearing shoes and socks and they had to go out onto the road. You could look at exploring different types of shoes and socks, but in a playful way. So she's not going to have to wear them, not going to be forced to stick her feet in the wellies. So I just wanted to give that as an example of, you know, you've all got great ideas about what you would do in that situation. There's no magic bullet here. It's thinking logically, practically, what do we already do? What do we know? And how do we then turn that into neuro-affirming goals? So none of this is about trying to change her. It's about trying to adapt to the environment to meet her needs. It's about helping her to express herself and advocate for her own needs. And when she can do that, we can fit that into routines. You know, it's not all about how do we do this in school, because she can't always be going and playing on a swing. But if you're starting to be able to recognise signs of distress so that attuned adults can see when she needs that, and you're also giving her the tools to be able to request those things when she feels like she needs them, which is a huge piece of work, then you're moving to a place where, yeah, she can hopefully be regulated to be able to join in with the classroom activities, but still be able to get those needs met at the same time. So how we can support neurodivergent learners. Again, this is a big block of text. I apologise, you can just come back and read through it at a later date. But a really key one is looking for and listening to the voices of autistic and other neurodivergent people. So you will find loads. There's so many books now, Facebook pages, Instagram pages. I've put a few links at the end. NeuroWild's one. There's the occupational therapist. It's another great one. Autistic Not Weird. That Facebook page and website is a brilliant one, run by Chris Bonello, who was a teacher. He's autistic. He's written a brilliant series of books, like young adult books, with a cast. The main characters in the book are all from a special school, and they're dealing with the apocalypse and saving the world, and it's brilliant. Be wary of medicalised language. So disorder deficit treatment. Teach self-advocacy skills, help children recognise their needs and preferences and help them to communicate these to other people. Think about what's underneath the actions. So thinking about the sensory environment, thinking of that build-up of stress over the day, and that stress bucket analogy of all the things coming in. Give downtime that's actually downtime and making sure it meets their individual needs. So I know sometimes at secondary school we'll be like, oh, well, they're moving around between lessons. That's enough of a movement break. but actually moving between lessons is generally in really noisy, busy corridors with loads of people, and you're being pushed and jostled, especially if you're a little year 7 and you're surrounded by year 11s. That's not downtime. That's going to be massively increasing stress levels. So to expect them to come in regulated because they've walked down a corridor isn't really going to meet that need. Respect all communication strategies. Show an interest in the child as an individual. So what do they like? What motivates them? And trying to use those interests when you can. And no, you can't change your whole curriculum to be about Pokemon, but you can check in with that child every day and say, oh, I saw this Pokemon teddy in a shop yesterday and I thought of you. Or, you know, get a favourite Pokemon. If you've got a kid who loves it, doesn't matter if you really don't like it, you can find a Pokemon that you identify with, I'm sure, and they'll be thrilled because you're taking an interest. Listen to parents. This has come up already before in the chat today. Look out for those kids that are masking fawning and people pleasing. You know, the ones who are always desperate to help and desperate to please. You know, the ones that are always taking on those responsibilities and kind of seem like everyone's mum in the class, looking after all the others. Just really have a think about what is it that's driving that behaviour. And meet them where they're at in that moment. Acknowledge that skills vary and don't shame them for needing support today, even if they could do it yesterday. If you haven't come across this resource yet, I'd really recommend having a look. If you're an early years setting, obviously that's who it's written for, but I would still recommend having a look, even if you're not an early years setting, because it's brilliant. It's freely available online. There's some really, really good stuff in there. And then I've put a link here, some links here at the end for things you might want to look at. Reframing Autism has free online learning, which you can choose. You can dip into it at different levels of understanding, so it's accessible to everybody. And that's the end. So I am done. Anyone has any questions or thoughts or comments? Can you go back to the book, please? Oh, the Anna Freud one. If you Google Anna Freud neurodiversity, you will find it, but I will try and quickly share again. There you go. Yeah, it's just free on their website. Cool. Any questions? No one's got their hands up. Apologies for talking very quickly at you for a long time. I think I need to go and have a run around the garden or something. Right, over to you again, Nancy.
I was going to say, Lucy, did you want to just quickly flash up the other handout that we're going to send out to people with the language,
yeah, I can.
The language one, if you just want to quickly flash that one up.
Yeah, I'll just stop sharing because I don't have it open and you don't want to read all my reports that I'm writing.
Because we'll send this out as well.
So part of the work I was doing within the educational psychology team, there's a group of us who are looking at neuroaffirming practice and making our own practice better, you know, changing the way we write our reports. So I've created a language table. So it's just got some language that you might use or come across, things that you could use instead. So other ways to word things, and then why. So why that's an issue. And this has been pulled together from various sources online, generally written by neurodivergent people. So it's just, yeah, if you are writing reports or things are coming up, just different ways that you might want to word things. But yeah, you'll get this in the email from Sue, along with the slides and the presentations.
Okay. Right. Thank you. I haven't actually got any more slides. I think probably, you know, between Alex, Lucy, Charlotte and myself, we could attempt to answer some questions if you've got any I know that the chat's been very active while Lucy's been talking. So has anybody got any sort of specific questions that they want to put out there that we can attempt to answer? Nope. Okay. Oh, yeah, there is one. Louise.
Hi, I've just before this meeting, I did complete the profiling tool with 2 parents and a play therapist. We were going through it and she kept reverting back to what was your child like when they were a baby, and she said when she had the training she was told to do that, but I didn't find it very helpful because we were talking about feeding and the mum was co-sleeping and breastfeeding, and so the baby wasn't a typical contented baby because he was co-sleeping and breastfeeding, and I said well that he would present totally differently to a formula fed baby. So should we be, when we're completing the toolkit, should we be asking the parents what the child presented like as a baby for each, because I didn't think it was helpful and it was taking us ages, but she said that's what she was taught. So
we ask for examples throughout the life course, don't we? So there may be something that is relevant in earlier childhood. If you're profiling a 14-year-old and say you're talking about emotional regulation, then if this is a new problem, a new challenge, then you could ask, okay, has they always been like this? What were they like when they were younger? So we do need to get a picture of, is this a new problem or is this something that has changed? So we do say it's okay to ask for examples in earlier childhood as well.
Yeah,
but it's not a developmental assessment though.
No,
it's not a developmental assessment. So the level of detail, it sounds as though the level of detail that you were going into was excessive.
Too much.
Really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it sounds excessive. And it's very much about just sort of understanding what the sort of current presentation is, but you know, clearly if a parent wants to say they've always been like this or whatever, then that's relevant to sort of refer to that as well. But no, it's not a developmental assessment, so there's no need to sort of dwell on that. So it's very much about what is everybody sort of seeing at the moment, what's the current picture.
Okay, thank you.
I think the only exception to that, Louise, from my point of view, would be where that, you know, there's a box on the profiling tool about what else might explain this difference for this young person. If we know about an early history or something, or I think in the training we've tried to prompt people to have a good understanding of some of the background history before doing the profiling tool, where that information is available. I know it isn't always, but if you know, for instance, that there's been, I don't know, postnatal depression or there's been early trauma or something like that, that it wouldn't hurt to be trying to explain the child's difference in school or at home by understanding that as part of your conversation. But as Sue says, the main focus is on the now, really. Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't know who was first, Ros or Jo and Eileen. I'll go for Ros. I'll go for Ros and then I'll get to Jo and Eileen after. Okay.
Thanks. Hi. No, that's been really helpful. The question from Masenko was talking about, just to be really clear, in terms of the new process and how it sort of integrates with where we were with other, you know, children who were already in the diagnostic pathway. Will they be expecting that we have done a neurodiverse profile for every child that goes forward for diagnostic?
No. If the child's already on the waiting list, okay,
Yeah.
if the child is already on the waiting list, they will stay on that waiting list, and profiling might be helpful. It might be helpful for that child. You know, there's a lot of good practice happening out there already. But if it would be helpful in terms of bringing the parent setting, other practitioners together, then we would encourage its use, really. We would encourage its use. So if they're already on the list, then they will stay there. Ros, was there another category that you were thinking of, or is that?
No, it's that. I think it's the confusion. Must everyone have a, neurodiverse profile before you're doing that? So then just to understand this, so we said we complete the profile, 12 weeks of implementation, then we can do the request for consultation if we've got that. So then where it says the 3 outcomes of that, one is being considered if the neurodiverse diagnostic list is there. So we would have to request that consultation, for new cases from the 1st of May, you'd have to request that consultation before you can make a referral.
Well, that actually is sort of pretty much replaces the referral. Yeah. Okay, that process is instead of the referral.
Good. Okay. No, that's clear. And just another thing, and just for the other people, what is the kind of, how much time are you taking with a profiling? Because I guess it depends on the parents. I mean, I'm taking probably about an hour and 15. I don't know if that's what people are pretty
variable. I've heard it, the feedback had variable. 45 minutes. I haven't heard anybody doing it any less than 45 minutes.
Okay.
So 45 minutes up is what I have, because some of the children are really more complex, need a lot more unpicking, and where's the parent on that journey, etc. So I think it's variable depending on the sort of specific circumstances, really. So all right, so Joe and Eileen Lawson College.
Hello. Earlier we did put something in the group chat, and Lucy, I think, sort of answered it in a way. Really, it's the limitations we have here with the behaviour policies, and I wonder how much clout you've got for getting our policies changed a little bit, because Joe and I have been autism champions here for a long time, and we are fully supportive of what you're talking about, but there are so many things that we aren't able to implement at the moment.
I'll leave Lucy to answer that one.
So is it Athena?
No, I can't possibly say.
Is that the MAT that you're with? Yeah, there are some MATs that we have been having meetings with the kind of management level of the MATs.
Oh, I love that.
Looking at the Equality Act and how policies need to comply with the Equality Act. So that is a work in progress. I really do appreciate that it's really hard, and it's hard for the teachers and support staff working with these pupils as well as the pupils themselves. We get that, we know in other schools within that MAT where we've had really, really good practice, and then policies have come in and changed. So we are trying to be as supportive as we can, but do contact us, the Autism in Schools team, if you've got specific things that we can help with, or you want someone to write a strongly worded letter in your direction or something. We're always happy to do that.
Lovely,
but we will keep fighting what we know is needed.
Yeah, thank you.
I think Leanne, I think you were next.
Yeah, hello. This is probably a silly question, but I'm hoping somebody else out of the hundreds are going to ask the same. I know I could check on the website myself. So has our usual referral pathway completely ended now? So where I've always done my referrals to get children on the pathway, is that not existing? I haven't done any since the 1st of May, obviously.
It's not there. It's not there. No, it's not there. The portal has been, I'm trying to think of the best word to describe it, but it's the portal has been repurposed for consultation, really, to be part of the process. So the old ABCs are no longer there.
So I've got a little one in my preschool currently. I'm a Senko in a preschool and a primary school. Been working with parents for a long time now. Obviously, little ones had lots of adaptations put into place. Behaviours have increased. We've been monitoring. We've been supporting. Would I need to do the profiling and then still obviously wait for the 12 weeks, even though we've done a lot of work previous? The only reason I haven't done the full referral so far is purely just down to time, typically, and now I'm out of time.
Yeah. It's going to be a requirement, really, that if you want further exploration around sort of diagnostics or help, sort of help around neurodiversity, that the journey starts with the profiling tool to sort of frame everything that we need to consider. It all feeds into that diagnostic evidence. It all feeds into it. So it's valuable completing the profile, sort of capturing what's happening, and write down all the things that you're doing already in terms of that's your plan. That is your plan. But the plan sort of sets out what the parents will do. It's not all just about what the setting or the school will do. It's what the family able to do as well. So it's the sort of focus is about bringing the two together. So, and 12 weeks in the scheme of things, when you think about a diagnostic wait is sort of 3 to 4 years, before you actually get to someone who can have a look at what you're saying and make a decision. You just need to put that 12 weeks into perspective, really. And then we would anticipate that plan would be an ongoing, that sort of golden thread that runs through in the background of everything. So
so currently I've got half a dozen children sat on the pathway, and like you've just said, some have been there for 2.5 years now, hopefully being seen before the end of this year, I've been told. Is the long-term plan that will obviously children will be seen or supported in some way sooner then? Is that the aim?
Well, the profiling is the framework for support. The children are already on that list where there's no the decision's already been made. They will remain there. They will remain on there. But if we're sort of moving very much to the new system, where sort of starting with profiling and then actually moving into diagnostics, if that's where the journey takes us sort of later on. So yeah.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
Okay, I don't know who was next. Who was next, Charlotte? Did you see?
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Oh, one. Oh, yeah,
sorry,
Stacey. There's numbers on them. What an idiot. Sorry, you've got numbers on your hands. I should know who they are. Go on then. Go on, Stacey, sorry.
Hi, I'm in an alternative provision. So if a dual registered school or a school that the child has been permanently excluded from has done the profiling for them and it's after the 12 weeks, but we still feel that they need to go to consultation, can we, as their provision, then go to consultation, or do we have to do the profiling again and start the process again?
No, I think you just need to update it, really. If it's already been started, it's a bit like a relay race, really, isn't it? A bit like a relay race. If it's handed over, you just update it, and then and then, because depending on, if you go from primary to secondary, there might be a sort of big school to a smaller school. You might find actually the priority areas sort of change slightly depending on depending on the new context. So just update what's there already, just as part of the review process, and that can be used as part of to form the basis of the discussion.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay, and Karen.
My question's similar to that. Obviously, I work in early years and our settings are very outside in forests and stuff. But I've done a few profiling tools on children that are going to school, but the 12 weeks is like August or July, so we won't see them again. So how obviously we'd send the profile with the child to the school, but then they don't know the child at all, so you've got quite a period of a big adjustment. So that was my sort of thing with our children that are going off to school.
Well, I mean, I think obviously you probably liaise very closely with your receiving schools from in terms of your sort of setting. So I think it's very much about just sort of communicating this is an ongoing piece of work, and then they can add to it as when they actually sort of receive the child, and then if there's a question about whether we need to extend it and do like another 12 weeks or something or other, then what I would say is contact the ND team, and we can sort of consider what's what's sort of going on there really. But we want to make a sort of, we want to standardize the process as much as possible, which is where we want to sort of have that minimum sort of 12-week period of trialing different sort of strategies and approaches and interventions. So
would there be a possibility, like the consultation bit, does that happen fairly quickly after the 12 weeks where we would be invited to that as well? Because obviously one child,
it's not just for the parents. Yeah, the consultation, well, you could be invited, there's no problem, you know, if
one child we've had from 10 months old, and he's a September child, so he's nearly 5 when he goes to school, so we've had him, you know, for over 4 years, so have all that history for him.
Yeah, there isn't a problem with how many people participate in the consultation, as long as, you know, parents quite comfortable with you attending, school attending, and them being part of that as well. So yeah, I mean, it's not all parents will want to be part of that consultation process, but a lot will, so that's fine to include them in that as well.
So we would, you know, possibly be invited to that type of thing.
Yeah. Well, if we know that that you're going to make a significant contribution to that consultation when we get to that point of having it, then it certainly seems entirely relevant for you to be there.
Okay, thank you.
Tracy?
Hiya. Yeah, we've had children recently that have joined our nursery setting that the GP's referred for paediatrician because they're presenting non-verbal with a lot of sensory seeking behaviours that they felt needed an assessment. And then they've gotten to the paediatrician not long after they've joined us, to be honest, and the paediatricians turned them back to us to say we needed to do the NTPT with them. So we're kind of curious on that one where we stand, because obviously the GPs referred them before we even had them because there's very clearly a need, and then they're refusing to go down the diagnostic route because the NTPT wasn't done.
Okay. Again, this is very much about trying to standardise the process for all ages, Tracy. I know, again, I think if we're talking about using the profiling tool to understand the child's needs, clearly you've got a pretty good understanding of what they are. Okay, you've got a pretty good understanding. Then again, 12 weeks of sort of support and intervention being sort of documented around the areas of need is when you put it into perspective, again, 12 weeks is nothing when you think about the actual wait for early years diagnostics is you know, is 4 years as well. So and we are running we're sort of at the moment we've separated out the two processes. We've got the old one running and we've got the new one running. So it's not in any way going to disadvantage the child at all if the family and the sort of setting or practitioners actually do the profiling as the sort of starting point. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, but we're happy to do that, and we said we've got no problems with doing that. You know, we've had the family in to do that with them, but as an initial experience for these families that have gone for their first appointment with a paediatrician, where they've been told by the GP that this is going to happen, only to then be shut down. I think that's not been a great start for them. They're not
going to be I think the important thing is they're not going to be disadvantaged by doing it the new way. They're not going to be disadvantaged at all. In fact, it's probably going to be more efficient.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, it will be more efficient. It's not going to disadvantage them at all. And in fact, we are, you know, in terms of early years particularly, we are looking at various ways to process the diagnostic information, one of which would be a sort of clinical consensus process. So so please reassure the parents that this is not in any way disadvantaging them and is probably more helpful than actually just joining a very long queue of 4
Okay.
years or whatever. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah. Okie doke. Karen. Oh, you didn't mean to have your hand up. Okay. Okay. Right. Okay. Well, I think we've done our we've done everything that we needed to get across to you. We will send out all the documents and Lucy's presentation, the slides that I put together, which have actually got the sort of link to the portal and everything on them. So we will work out the best way to get that to everybody, to make sure that nobody is sort of missed off the list. In future, I think we'll be advertising these events differently, so that because I think the team that organise these were overwhelmed by emails from people saying, is it going to be recorded or whatever. There were lots and lots of sort of individual emails coming through. So we will find a way to make sure that it's advertised out through the system, so that you get it multiple different ways, really. And I think there were some people that fell off the list completely this time. But given the fact that we've got sort of like 1,200 people who have done the training now, they, getting updates and everything, hopefully will be useful. But next time we're going to do the reluctant eaters within the context of neurodiversity, and they're going to run that session for an hour. So we'll just have a half an hour update with an hour focusing on that topic. So hopefully I haven't confused you any more than you probably are confused already about what we're trying to do. And my email is there. Please get back to me if and or Charlotte, and we will we'll respond to any of your queries and hopefully just provide some support around this change.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it's just worth noting that it's, it is a change, and Sue and I are always saying, and Kate, it's a dynamic project. It's going to change, and there's going to be alterations as we know, because we're actually guessing at the moment. We don't know what the demand is going to be, so we can't quite say exactly what the offer will be, because you're planning something that you don't know. It will keep on changing, and we're doing our best to just keep the comms coming out as that happens. But yeah, please do contact the CFT ND Cornwall at nhs.net is the best way to contact, because one of us will definitely pick that up.
Yeah.
Get back to
and like I said, I'm quite happy to, if someone says, can we have a conversation, I'm quite happy to set up a Teams meeting with people, if that'd be helpful. Yeah, I'm quite happy to do that.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you for giving. Oh, Joe's got a hand up.
Sorry, Sue, I've only got a quick question. Where do you showed us the new profiling tool form with the 9 areas on, and then a bit more on the third and fourth page. Where is that? Where do you find that?
I'll send that one out to you. Okay. I'm gonna put that one on Services for Schools as well, but I'll send that one out.
Sorry,
that's an expansion of the old one, so we'll make sure that everybody gets that.
That's great.
There's just something a few people have asked in the chat. I know we're running out of time. Well, we've run out of time, but on the Services for School, which section is it? Does anybody know the exact place on the Services for School site
It's
where people
neurodiversity? It's a neurodiversity strategy, and there's a folder there called resources. I think if you go into it and search neurodiversity strategy, in that section there is a folder that they created for me with some of the resources in. So we'll add some more of these things to that as well. We might as well, from a school perspective, put all of this stuff in there, and I'll get them to create another folder called Community of Practice, and then we can put all the presentations in there, I guess.
And if you search neurodiversity, go to the resources page for Cornwall and iOS celebrating neurodiversity strategy. I couldn't find it, but I've just found it. It's all in there down the right hand side, ND profiling tool training resources.
Brilliant, thank you. And Yeah, just to reiterate, because we have put it in the chat, but in case people have missed it, if you're not in a school setting, if you work in the voluntary sector or in health or anywhere else, you can register for a Services for Schools account, still be able to access all of this there.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming and listening to us. We are working incredibly hard to try and to make sure that that we keep the momentum moving forward. So I really appreciate your being here, actually. So thank you very much. Okay, right. So see you at the next one.
Thank you all. Take care.
All right. Bye.